Good morning. Good morning. My name is Terry Goldberg, and this is my wonderful co-chair, Lori Bernstein. We are thrilled to be here in person for our Women's Philanthropy signature event, Living Generously, a Gathering for Good. Lori and I have been waiting such a long time to be back in a room like this filled with women who care deeply about our Jewish community. We are excited to welcome nearly 200 of you here this morning. If this is your first Federation event or first women's event, we extend a special welcome to you. We are so glad you could join us. We are grateful to our Federation professionals and leadership who work hard every day, and we want to express our gratitude. David Saginaw, Federation President. Dov Ben-Shimon, Federation Executive Vice President and CEO. Kim Hirsch, Executive Director of the Jewish Community Foundation. Michelle Landau, who could not be with us today, but UJA Campaign Chair. Rebecca Pollack, Vice President of Development. Deborah Jacobs, Women's Philanthropy President. Diane Bask, Director of Women's Philanthropy. Our lead professional for this event is Susan Ferber, Women's Philanthropy Senior Major Gift Officer, and we especially appreciate all of her efforts. Please join us in recognizing the Event Leadership Committee, who helped make this morning an incredible success. Is there a slide?
Yeah, the slide's up.
Oh, okay. We also want to recognize our corporate sponsors for their generous support.
This is an exciting time. We have some significant milestones to celebrate today and in the days ahead. You may have heard the Lions of Judah are turning 50. You'll hear more about this trailblazing group of women later in our program. And we are preparing to mark another big birthday in the year to come. Our Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West will turn 100 in 2023. For nearly a century, our Federation has cared for people in need and built a strong Jewish community for all of us to enjoy. Our centennial, with Jane Wilf as chair, and an outstanding group of leaders, will celebrate our community in many ways, with a centennial campaign to secure the next 100 years, a mega mission to Israel in July, and a year of exciting programs following the mission. The women of Greater Metro West have helped shape our history and have made their voices heard. Today, we are making a bigger difference than ever before. Through our collective strength, through our donations, advocacy, and volunteer work, we build community right here in New Jersey and around the world. All of us in this room make this possible by living generously. This morning, you will see how we accomplish more when we do it together. In just a moment, we will hear from Deborah Jacob, our Women's Philanthropy President. But first, please watch this video to see the impact that each of us makes possible.
Millions of people have fled the war in Ukraine. Hundreds of elderly Holocaust survivors. They are becoming refugees once again.
A horrifying surge in 2021 of anti-Semitic incidents in America.
Growing tonight in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Devastating flooding forced hundreds of people out of their homes.
What are the key needs right now? What are these people's plans?
our thousands of years of existence as a people, it's always been through collective, through teamwork, and through togetherness that we can fight the battles we have to fight.
We learned a lot about our community this past year, about our strength, our resolve, our compassion, our generosity, particularly during times of crisis, and use it to chart a roadmap for the months and even years ahead.
When we are together, we are reminded that we are a part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
We need to work harder. We need to hold ourselves and our leaders up to a higher standard, upholding the benefit of all those who need us and working for higher ideals. There is absolute goodness, sacrifice, decency, and kindness to care for those in need, to build community, and to save the world.
We want the same things for our children and have always tried to live with the intention of leaving the world a better place.
In the face of the rising tide of bigotry, silence is not an option. So we have to use our voices as we're doing today, and we have to use it proudly. This is not going to be solved tomorrow, or in a week, or in months, but this is years, and this is just the beginning.
Good morning, everyone. What would you do if you had to leave everything and everyone you knew behind? This summer, I met a young woman, a Jewish mother, who faced this very real question. Her name is Nastia. She's 32 years old, and she had a busy life as a vegan chef in Ukraine. When Russia invaded and the bombs began falling, she left her husband and she walked with their 5-year-old daughter to the border of Romania. They went alone because men aren't allowed to leave Ukraine. And when Nastia and her daughter crossed into Romania, they got into a stranger's car and they made their way to Krakow, Poland, a place she had never been before. They were among thousands of Ukrainians arriving in Poland. She knew no one. She didn't speak the language. She didn't have a plan, but she had her cell phone. And with that cell phone, she took it out and she Googled 3 words: Jewish, community, Krakow. And do you know what she found? She found us. She found one of our overseas partners, the Jewish Community Center of Krakow. Volunteers from the JCC helped her find a place to stay, gave her clothing and emergency supplies. I met Nastia at the JCC when I traveled to Israel and Poland this summer. I went to see the work that we were doing with the refugees. Here she is on the screen on the left. I also met Holocaust survivors like Zosha, the 86-year-old woman on the right of the screen. She was hidden as a child, only surviving the war because of the goodness of others. And now she is helping the new refugees get settled. Nastia's daughter, the 5-year-old, is in the JCC kindergarten in Krakow, learning Polish, celebrating Shabbat. Nastia is safe, and yet she's in limbo right now with a fragile new life in Poland and her husband stuck in Ukraine. All the Ukrainian mothers she knows are in very, very similar situations. She told us, "Don't forget us." As it was months ago in Ukraine, so it is today. On this trip, I saw our federation system at work. I listened as calls flooded into emergency hotlines for Ukrainians. I learned how we make it easy for families to move to safety in Israel. I followed our UJA annual campaign and Ukraine Emergency Fund dollars, and I understand why. This is the largest humanitarian crisis to happen in Europe since World War II. On this journey, one thing was clear. This is a women's story. 90% of the refugees are women and children. And it is you, the women of Greater Metro West, who make our work with them possible. Your philanthropy and leadership provides infrastructure and partnerships needed to offer help on this huge scale. Federation was there. They were there at the start of the war in Ukraine. They provided food, medicine, and care for the elderly. They made risky evacuations. They got people to Israel. They did that because we already had invested in building relationships on the ground, months and years ahead of time. Our reach is far and it's wide. The Federation system was set up for this. It's a system that says you can count on your global Jewish community. That's a powerful statement. It says we cannot take away all your troubles, but you are not alone. And to think, we also take care of everyday needs right here in New Jersey. One gift to the 2023 campaign covers it all. Thank you to those of you who have already made your gift this year. With your help, we will continue to care for Holocaust survivors. We will deliver hot, kosher meals. We will combat anti-Semitism wherever it occurs. We will secure our synagogues, partner agencies, and Jewish schools. I ask you to join me in making your campaign pledge today and to consider giving a little more than last year. We must do more today because the cost of providing these life-changing services has increased. It has increased significantly. We have an annual goal to raise more than $21 million. There's an extra incentive today for our guests who are new to Federation, who are new to giving. We have an exciting match made possible by Lois Lautenberg of blessed memory. All brand new gifts of any size will be doubled. This reflects Lois's philosophy that every single gift makes a difference. Lois was a pioneer. She was also a president of Women's Philanthropy. And she had a wonderful saying, if you give your best gift and I give my best gift, then our gifts are equal. I hope you are inspired by Lois's words and give as generously as you can. In your pink bag that met you at your table, you will find a pledge card. Take a moment to fill it out. Federation professionals are on hand and will be circling through the room to collect the cards. If you would prefer to make your pledge online today, we can help you with that. You can easily use your cell phone right now. On the back of your name tag is a QR code. Flip it over. You can scan the code with your phone camera and it will take you to a personalized giving page. Simply check a few boxes and your pledge will be recorded right away. We will give you a few moments to do this before we welcome our guest speaker. If you need any assistance, please raise your hand and a professional will be happy to help you. Thank you all for living generously. Thank you all. To those of you that just filled out your pledge card, thank you. We are all so privileged to be able to be here today, and more so to be able to give at this level. We really are fortunate to be on this side. And growing up, I always wondered what it would feel like to be an adult, and always wanted to be at a point in my life where I could make a gift that would help another person. So how lucky are we to be able to give and to be able to help others? I am so honored to introduce our featured speaker this morning, Emmy Award-winning co-anchor of ABC News Nightline, Juju Chang. Juju has won acclaim for stories with underlying themes of civil rights and women's rights and social justice. She has used her voice and her platform for good. Please turn your attention to the screens.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Juju Chang is my Nightline co-anchor, a cherished fixture with the ABC News family, and a world-class reporter of the highest caliber. From her early years co-anchoring World News Now,
here's some of the stories we're following this morning,
to a correspondent reporting from the heart of the source,
to help bring badly needed disaster relief,
to breaking news, Juju making history on Good Morning America.
First, let's go to Juju Chang, who has the morning's news.
The first Korean American to anchor a network morning news show.
First, Juju Chang, back with the morning news.
Good morning, Robin and George.
Let's go back over to Juju. Good morning, Juju.
Good morning again, guys, and good morning, everyone.
And carrying her love for stories and people to Nightline.
It smells like every Grateful Dead concert I've ever been to.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
The show she's been calling home the last 8 years. Relentlessly pursuing groundbreaking news.
What are the hardest parts of ALS?
Are you trying to normalize racism? What was the emotional impact on you of what happened in that hotel room?
Crisscrossing the globe.
His father was killed by gangs. His brother was killed at the age of 16. He himself was shot 3 times, and yet he says it's the violence against women that's out of control.
And on the front lines of history.
I mean, many people believe that Kim Jong-un came to this summit.
We want to give you a quick look at the Electoral College map.
So many people call you a traitor. Many call you a hero. Who is Chelsea Manning?
A dogged journalist, beloved wife and devoted mother of 3, and dedicated advocate for the Asian American community, pushing forward their stories to the forefront.
Did you feel pressure to represent, as it were?
I was certainly mindful of the role that I'm playing.
Screenings with Asian Americans have left audiences in tears. Why is it so emotional? No snails were hurt in the production of this story.
Juju also never wavering from her support of the Korean American Community Foundation, a co-founder and tireless champion. Throughout the years visiting Korean nonprofits, learning about the challenges facing the community and the possible solutions. Juju also the annual star MC for the foundation, only missing 1 year when she was called on assignment. A steadfast ambassador and a pillar in the Korean American community, her generous spirit and down-to-earth personality infectious to all, on and off TV.
All right.
Juju is grace. She is goodness. She is the best of us.
It's kind of crazy, right?
You know, I look back at that clip and I'm like, it is kind of crazy. I cannot believe that I did all those things and that I'm standing here with you today. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much to Terry and Lori for inviting me. I told them right before coming on stage that I feel at home here. And I'm going to try to be brief because in the interest of time, I know you're all very busy. I feel like I love being in a room full of powerful women. I can feel the energy for sure. And I read once that you can de-stress by having lunch with your girlfriends. So I feel like having lunch with 200 of my girlfriends is an incredible de-stressor. And I also was, I met David Saginaw earlier, and he was like, my attention span is only 30 minutes, Juju. So
I will try to get it under that for sure. So I was thinking about how to talk about today. There's so much I want to say. First of all, I know what you're thinking. I don't look Jewish. It's true. But I wanted to sort of talk about all of it, my Asian identity, my Jewish identity, all of it. And so I came up with a structure, and it's the 4 questions of Passover. We ask, like, why do we have dip bitter herbs? Why do we lean? Why do we, eat matzah? And it's always about what is different about these today, right, than any other day. So what are the 4 questions that I'm going to try to answer today? And the first one is, why is my career in journalism perhaps different than other people's career in journalism? The second question will be, why is my Asian identity and my Jewish journey different than perhaps others? The third question is going to be, how is anti-Asian hate different than, say, anti-Semitism? And the fourth question is going to be, if I get through David's time frame quick enough, will be, what can we do differently to combat hate? So let's start with, how is my career perhaps different than others? And I would say that it has to do with my identity. I was born in Korea, came here at the age of 4, moved to Sunnyvale. I have a lunch date who lives in Saratoga, like literally down the street from where I grew up. But I grew up at a time in the late 60s is when we moved. I was born in 65, right after the 1965 Immigration Act, so there weren't a lot of faces that were like mine at the time. And I grew up thinking that my family's food smelled funny and that my parents talked funny. And I was reminded on the playground that my face looked funny. And so I grew up understanding what it meant to be other, right? And I think that I experienced things and felt things that I didn't even have words to describe. So I would watch my dad. I would run errands with him. He was a small businessman, and we would go and run errands. And I would see people talk down to him, right? I would see people treat him badly. And I could see it have an impact on him. And I didn't have the words to describe what I was seeing. The unconscious bias, the, aggressive, whatever, microaggressions, or the racism. I would label it that now, but back then I was like, I just knew it didn't feel right, right? And yet the irony is that my dad, who was the victim in many ways of racism, was also a bit xenophobic himself. Because one of the things he said to me when I was moving, I went to college and I thought I was going to be an engineer, and of course that didn't happen. So I moved to New York to pursue a career in journalism, and the thing he said to me was, be careful, there's lots of Jews in New York. And so, this was based on nothing other than the sort of cultural anti-Semitism that exists in a lot of places. And so it, to me, is an interesting study in sort of what is it that makes us see people as other, right? And I think growing up Jewish for my kids, and certainly being biracial as kids, makes them feel other too. But I think as I started a career in journalism, I understood that the powerful story that Deb was talking about is that I could empathize with other people who had had similar journeys, whether they had been marginalized in whatever way, whether they came as immigrants. I look at some of the stories on that reel, and I did stories, that one where I'm sitting on the back of the Jeep, that was Honduras, and looking at femicide, why there was so much violence against women in Honduras. It's the most dangerous place to be a woman outside of a war zone. And it has to do with all the things that affect women in the United States, but to a lesser degree, whether it's intimate partner violence or sexualized violence or, what have you. I went to Guatemala on a climate migrant story, looking at why the climate change has ruined crops year after year after year, and why these desperate families are taking their meager life savings and investing in their 17-year-old son to travel through Guatemala to Mexico and come here to the United States to wash dishes and hopefully help the rest of the family survive back home. It's that kind of powerful connection, that kind of empathy that I think has been a trademark of the kind of journalism that I have done for the last 30 years. And I think in many ways it is what makes my journalism different than perhaps other people's type of journalism. So that's question number one, hopefully answered. Question number two is, how is my Judaism journey different than perhaps others? Clearly, I wasn't born Jewish. And actually, recently, my middle son was, or my youngest son, I have 3 sons, was on he went to a Jewish day school, which my friend Orit and I sent our kids to in Manhattan, called Road of Shalom, and they take an 8th grade trip to Israel. So he goes to Israel, and they're going to the wall, and one of the minders at the wall takes one look at him and says, "Was your mother born a Jew?" And so his, was it our rabbi? Yeah, our rabbi just grabbed him and took him away and walked him into the thing. But, all of these lines and these distinctions that we draw along the way. My Judaism was different in that I came to New York and 6 months later fell in love with Neil Shapiro. And there were so many jokes 7 years later when we got married about Jew marries Jew. And you can't change your name to Juju Shapiro. It's like Jew. Like, you can't do that. But I said to him when we were first dating, like, I'm never going to convert, okay? Because I take my secular humanism very seriously, and I just don't want to be, don't want to convert, so, like, you be you and I be me. And he was like, okay, but we have to raise our kids Jewish. And I was like, okay, deal. And so we go through life for the next 7 years, we get married, we have 5 years of, what is that called? Double income, no kids. And we have a child, our first son, and about a year later, one day over breakfast, literally, I said, I think I'm gonna convert. And he literally did this. What? And I was like, yeah, I've been watching you for the last dozen years live your life in a way that just felt, I don't know, like I didn't have to become a situational ethicist. Well, if I don't get caught and I'm not going to hurt anybody, then I can break the rules. I'm still kind of a situational ethicist. But he felt more like organically menschy. And I kept going to high holiday services and really appreciating the messaging and the thought and care that went into it. And so I went through a year of classes at Road of Shalom. They ask you to bring your spouse. So he and I went together. Our rabbi who converted me is a rabbi by the name of Matthew Gewirtz. Yeah, that's true. Clearly, there's name recognition in this room because he's at B'nai Jeshurun. And he is still a very dear friend. We have Shabbat dinners every once in a while. I went to his daughter's bat mitzvah at B'nai Jeshurun. There were more tears shed that day. He has been in all 3 of my children's bris and bat mitzvah, all of it. Bar mitzvahs, no daughters, alas. But ultimately, I came at Judaism in a meaningful, to me, way, and I think it actually changed my husband's experience of it too, because the clergy became more of our friends than our, up on the bima on high, right? So that's my Judaism journey. And the third question is, so how is anti-Asian hate different than perhaps anti-Semitism or other kinds of hate? And the short answer is, it isn't. It's not different. It's the exact same fundamental core. It's different in the way that it's justified or manifests or what have you. So I'll take you through a little bit of it. So, the dark days of 2020, right? The pandemic hits. We're all, in our pajamas, Zooming within a few months. But we're genuinely scared. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety. It's the biggest disruption, frankly, in our lifetime, certainly mine, right? We were worried about the economy. We were worried about people dying. We were worried about our family members, right? And all of that anxiety and that fear was weaponized in many ways against the Asian American community. It was classic scapegoating. Everyone in this room knows what that word means and the deadly consequences it can have, right? And so when your leaders in Washington, systemically sort of give a nod to Kung flu or the China virus or the Wuhan flu, suddenly you'll see spikes in hate. And there's an interesting form of solidarity because Jonathan Greenblatt at the ADL, who runs the Center for Extremism, he actually went to some Asian American leaders and said, you know, we're tracking a spike in online hate against the Asian American community. You guys better be ready because there's a wave cresting and it's about to hit your community. And sure enough, that's when we started seeing all of this hate spill out onto the streets. Verbal abuse, physical attacks. You know, a family in Texas from Vietnam was slashed at a Sam's Club. There was a grandfather in Oakland who was Thai, pushed to the ground and killed. These are people who aren't even Chinese. Not that it matters, but in a way, that's scapegoating, right? I don't need to tell this room the number of times throughout Jewish history where Jews were scapegoated, and it led to deadly consequences. I did a talk with the AJC, and the young man, I should have thought of his name. He's a Josh Gad. He plays the snowman in Frozen. You have children in your life, clearly. A lovely guy. His parents were Holocaust survivors. His grandparents, rather, had been in I think, Bergen-Belsen. And he was the one who said, you know, it was only because of the deprivation in the interwar period that Jews were scapegoated, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's totally right. Total scapegoating. We've been, you know, Asian Americans in the United States have been scapegoated throughout American history. If you look at the Chinese Exclusion Act, it unleashed, again, when the government sanctions hate, it unleashed violence across the Pacific Northwest against Asian Americans. There were lynchings and there were pogroms. Literally, the Chinese were pushed out of town, right? When it comes to World War II, we talk about the Japanese internment. There is you saw me interview George Takei, who played the original Sulu in Star Trek. He wrote a graphic novel, which reminded me in some way of Maus, right? My children read both because when he was a child, his family was rounded up, taken to the Santa Anita racetrack. They lost their home. They lost all their generational wealth. They slept in the stables for a few weeks until they were taken by train and held behind barbed wire for the balance of the war. I mean, the government, it took, what, 70 years to apologize for that? You know, there were maybe checks cut to families. But George likes to point out that these were, you know, not, he said, I was being interviewed by a radio person who said, oh, tell me about those Japanese incarceration camps. And he said, those were not Japanese camps. Those were American-run concentration camps. And he said, I use that word very specifically because what happened in the Holocaust, those were concentration camps by definition. The definition being a concentration of people held together, you know, imprisoned because of ethnicity or some, you know, designation. Those were death camps, right? In the United States, those were concentration camps run by the American government. But at the same time, we weren't just fighting the Japanese Imperial Army. We were also fighting the Nazis. And yet German Americans were not imprisoned. German Americans were not rounded up and lost all of their generational wealth. And that is the kind of racialized othering that's happened to the Asian American community. And so in many ways, the fact that Jonathan Greenblatt could help found with these Asian American leaders the Asian American Foundation, made up of 4 billionaires. I was just at their retreat recently in San Francisco. And it's Joe Tsai, who owns the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Bay, who's of KKR, Li Lu of Himalayan Capital, and Jerry Yang of Yahoo. Those 4 guys and Jonathan Greenblatt got in a room and they decided, you know what, we're gonna work together. And they got pledges across corporate America because Asian Americans are really underserved in many ways. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the stereotypes that hurt Asian Americans that people I don't think are aware of. And so I like to sort of talk about it in this room. One of which is the perpetual foreigner myth. It's the kind of thing that you know, people say to me all the time, oh, where are you from? You know, I'll be like, oh, I'm from California. And they're like, no, where are you really from? And the implication of that is you're not from here. You don't look American, so where are you from? And the bottom line is that kind of unconscious bias, right, is what leads to things like the Japanese internment, because whether you've been here for 3 generations, you can still be seen as a foreigner, right? It is what leads in corporate America to what's often referred to as the bamboo ceiling, that Asian Americans are seen in a certain way. Oh, you're worker bees, you don't have, the bamboo ceiling is very similar to the glass ceiling, because a lot of these sort of subjective things that hold women back, right? Well, on paper you have all the qualifications, but you're missing that sort of star quality, like that subjective something. And if there's all those studies again and again and again, the classic one being the venture capital study. Do you know about this? So there's a venture capitalist and they get the exact same pitch, the exact same script, the exact same idea. And one is narrated in a male voice and the other is narrated in a female voice. And the one in the male voice, exact same idea, exact same verbiage, gets greenlit at a rate of like 60% versus like 30%. The numbers are a little bit off, but the orders of magnitude are dramatic. And so the idea that like, oh no, there's no unconscious bias against, all you have to do is look at the disproportionate numbers. Like in Silicon Valley, 20 to 25% of Asian Americans are the engineers. But if you look in management ranks, C-suites, boards of trustees, it's low single digits, right? And that number is similar whether you're looking in the board of surgeons, almost any corporate sphere. And so that is, in many ways, the kind of subtle impact of what I would call subconscious bias. The other aspect of it is something known as the model minority idea, right? We look at Asian Americans, and I think actually Jewish Americans suffer from this as well. Like everybody looks at you and they're like, oh, you're crazy rich Asians. You all like in one generation, have a fabulous house in, the Alps somewhere. And the truth is, what it does is it renders invisible the people for whom you are providing services, right? The more newly immigrant population, the elderly population. You saw that I helped found the Korean American Community Foundation, and it does a lot of the kinds of work that the Jewish Federation does, right? Because 1 in every 4 Asian Americans who live in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, are uninsured. Roughly 20% live in poverty. So many are undocumented and suffering, and they're invisible. Asian Americans are very much invisible in our world. They're the ones who deliver our Chinese food dinner. They're the ones who paint our nails. They're the ones who silently and invisibly get past. They're the ones who are pumping gas, right, doing those things. So it's only when you see them in the way that your federation sees the need around you, right, that kind of empathy can be given. The other aspect of it, the other Asian American stereotype is the hypersexualization of Asian women compared to Asian men who are then emasculated, right? And people have often said to you, oh, Juju, why do you find that offensive? Like, And I'm like, because it's not a compliment, actually. It's still dehumanizing, because you don't see me, you see a stereotype, right? And if you don't think that's dangerous, I would point to the shootings, the spa shootings in Atlanta, where a young white gunman walked into 3 different Asian-themed spas and killed 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian women or Asian American women. And when he was interviewed by the sheriff, he came out and the sheriff said, well, the young man said he had a sex addiction and that he was trying to get rid of his sex addiction. And so that's why, see, it's not about sex. It's not about race. It's not racialized. This is about sex. And yet any Asian woman, and frankly, anyone who understands what that kind of stereotyping does, understands that it is an act that arguably intersects with race and racism. And so all of these are to say that in many ways the Atlanta spa shootings were a lot like the Tree of Life shootings. It galvanized the community in a wake-up kind of way, and Asian Americans are from all over, right? They're from, like the Jewish diaspora, they're from all over the world. And they come here and we have different, different ways that we slice our, pie. Are you Orthodox? Are you, Reform? Are you, what have you? And the truth is it was a unifying moment in the Asian American community. It's part of what got TAF off the ground was the anger that ensued after the spa shootings. And so it leads me to my final fourth question. That's okay. I told you earlier, with that outfit, you can do whatever you want. You should see her. It's beautiful when she stands up later. I got to figure out where she got the outfit. It's really good. The fourth question is, what can we do differently to combat hate? And really, what's so great is it's what you're doing in this room in many ways, right? It is, Joan Baez once said, action is the antidote to despair, right? It's this idea that you light a candle instead of curse the darkness. And I think that's what you do. In many ways, fighting hate involves leaning into your identity and being proud of it. Telling my boys that they are 50% Korean and 100% Jewish. Making them proud of their Jewish roots, making them proud of their Korean heritage, and making them part of a community that allows them to stand up and be proud. And what you do is you build community. And you're building a community in a time where there's all sorts of kind of disturbing trends, right? One of the trend lines, and this is my current rabbi at Rodef Shalom, Ben Spratt, wrote a book called Awakenings. It's called, Awakenings, American Jewish Transformation. And it points to the cratering of synagogue affiliation, right? Even in my time in the Jewish experience, I started going to high holiday services, I told you, with my husband like 25 plus years ago. And the synagogue was filled. We had to do 2 sessions in order to get everybody through in the high holidays. Now there's 1 session, and there's also lots of empty seats. And membership has cratered like this, right? And yet at the same time, there are bright spots on the horizon, right? One of the funniest things that I read recently is that Jews are the most popular religion. Did you know this? The Pew Report says that if you're to pick your most popular religion in the country, Jews rate as the most popular, 63%. We outrank Catholics at 60%. Just want you to know that. See, you're all going to Google this later, just to fact check me. I know it. And yet it feels incongruous because at the same time, there is this explosion of hate, right? It's undeniable. And in 2021, the anti-Semitic hate crimes went up. A lot of that is because the Proud Boys and these online extremists are getting more and more emboldened. The ADL said that 63% of American Jews in the past 5 years have felt a form of anti-Semitism, whether it's verbal abuse or physical harassment or discrimination in some way. And so what can we do? Here's some more bright spots, though. Like in 1990, like during the 90s when I was like, hanging out and about to marry Neil Shapiro, there was this population study of American Jews, and there was this idea that intermarriage was this silent Holocaust, that intermarriage was this like terrible thing, and that it was going to destroy Jewish culture in the United States. And I would argue that the numbers don't really say that, speak to that. Like today, in 1990, 5 million Jews identified as Jews. Today, that number is 7.5 million Jews. There is a sense of Jewish identity that's actually growing. We are among the fastest growing religions in that sense. But when you break down that pie, a lot of it has to do with Jews who are unaffiliated, Jews who are bicultural, Jews whose parents intermarried. And so really it's about building a community and building a Jewish identity that stands firm, stands proud, And it goes beyond the normal lines. And so I want to give you a couple quick, I'm looking at the time, David, I swear. A quick couple of examples, one of which is, have you heard of Shabbat in a Box? It's the cutest thing ever, right? It's a meal prep kit. And for those of you who have older children who've moved away who don't belong to a synagogue, you can get Shabbat in a box, and you can, light candles and have challah and do a Shabbat. There are other ways of being secularly involved and being a secular Jew that is part of what you guys do in building community. This lunch is a classic example. You don't have to be a devout Jew to be at this lunch. You just identify with being Jewish and you're here. And we shouldn't draw lines here about who of you is, whatever, right? There's also, the Kohenet. Do you know about these Jewish high priestesses? I feel like you guys are all Jewish high priestesses. But there's an actual, spiritual camp. It's a 3-year training session, and I've been involved in my synagogue. I've done, the cantorial selection committee and the rules and regs committee and, what have you. But just being involved in the community, in taking action, as Joan Baez says, right? That action is the antidote to despair. That is a lot of what you guys are doing is working in action. And I think ultimately, for me, living generously, which is the theme of your lunch, is what, sort of without being too Pollyannish, is the meaning of life, right? It's like making the world a better place. And so I just want to finish up by saying, I hope I answered those 4 questions. I hope I've left you with some sense of community and sisterhood, and just know that I'm super grateful to be a part of your lunch and to be a part of your community today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juju. Your commitment to social justice is empowering and inspiring. I'm Abby Halpern. I'm one of your vice presidents of Women's Philanthropy. I'm going to ask you to take a look at the signs on your tables. They say Greater Metro West women give time, energy, and love. 50 years ago, one group of women established a new standard in philanthropy. In 1972, 2 women in Miami, Florida, put their heads together. They were Norma Kipnis Wilson and Toby Friedland, both of blessed memory. It was a terrible time for the Jews in the Soviet Union. Norma and Toby wanted to raise money to help the Soviet Jews who were escaping to the United States. They established a federation giving level called the Lion of Judah, and they set the threshold for participation at the cost of resettling a single Soviet family, which at the time was about $5,000. They asked women to pledge $5,000 each to the UJA annual campaign. Of course, $5,000 is still an incredibly generous gift today, but it was a huge amount back then in 1972. At that time, women could not easily obtain a credit card or mortgage on their own. These 2 women were visionaries. They were bold Jewish women just like you. And they knew that if Jewish women set their minds to something, great things could happen. They created a gold pin to signify, I just lost my spot, to signify a woman's commitment to the Jewish people. Their concept caught on, and now it is one of the most recognizable brands in American philanthropy. There are 18,000 Lions across North America and Israel. And there are 430 of them right here in Greater Metro West. That's making us one of the largest Lion communities. It's remarkable. In 1981, Jewish women in Allentown, Pennsylvania, they followed suit. They created the Pomegranate Society for women who give $1,800 or more and a silver pomegranate pin. In this room, There are women who have been lions and palms more or less from the beginning. Wow. That's a lot of years of caring and doing. Women's philanthropy evolved, and now we offer virtual and socially distanced pinnings, special moments when those who want a lion or pomegranate pin receive one. Greater Metro West has always led the way, with many of these women preserving their gifts forever. To celebrate our Federation's centennial next year, more women are creating Lion of Judah endowments and plan gifts of all sizes. This ensures that their annual gifts and their names will live on past their lifetimes. As we mark the 50th anniversary of the Lion of Judah, we all proudly walk in these women's footsteps. They teach us to dream big, seek others who share our Jewish values, and live as generously as we can. It is now my pleasure to introduce Paula Saginaw, one of past Women's Philanthropy presidents, to present a very special award to one of our Lions of Judah.
Thanks, Abby. And Juju, I think my husband David could have listened to you for hours. Good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to present this year's Kipnis Wilson Friedland Award to my dear friend, Lori Klinghoffer. This award, given every 2 years on behalf of National Women's Philanthropy, marks the extraordinary contribution, as Abby mentioned, of Norma Kipnis Wilson and Toby Friedland, the founders of the Lion of Judah program of blessed memory. It honors a woman of distinction from every Federation community and is given to those who embody the spirit and vision of the Lion of Judah through the commitments to tzedakah and tikkun olam. Lori's resume is outstanding, and I wish I had time to share all the impressive roles that she has held, but since I only have a couple of minutes to speak, you can all read her extensive bio on the back of the program. Suffice it to say, Lori has held and continues to hold prominent leadership positions locally in Greater Metro West, on the national front, as well as internationally. On a personal note, I first got to know Lori on a Federation women's mission to Prague and Budapest when we traveled with our mothers back in 1997. When our moms went to sleep each night, Lori and I hung out at the bar with the other young women and instantly became soul sisters. We began traveling together on just about any mission that our Federation offered, visiting Jewish communities around the world. We traveled to Ukraine, Morocco, Poland, Ethiopia, Russia, Cuba, Israel, and so many others. On every one of those trips, I witnessed Lori's incredible strength as a leader and as a philanthropist. Her wisdom, her charisma, her generosity, her passion all contributed to people wanting to be around her. You may remember the familiar slogan, "When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen." Well, when Lori talks, people listen. And that is why Lori was sought after for so many top leadership positions. Fortunately for us, Lori has one major flaw. She doesn't know how to say no. She cares so deeply about the Jewish people here in her own backyard, in Israel, in Ukraine, and around the world, that saying no to anything asked of her is just not an option. Lori is dedicated not only to making and posting pictures of her challahs every week, but to making this world a better place. For all that she has accomplished, we are so grateful and proud to present Lori with the Kipnis Wilson Friedland Award. Please join me in wishing Lori a mazel tov. We are delighted to present you with this beautiful Judaic paper cut depicting the Lion of Judah, which states, "One who is charitable and just fills the world with kindness." And the plaque reads, in honor of Lori Klinghoffer, Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West New Jersey's 2022 Kipnis Wilson Friedland Award recipient, given by National Women's Philanthropy.
I'd like to say enough said. Wow, this is outstanding. First of all, we're back. We're back. And thank you, Paula, for your incredible words. The words are filled with kindness and love, as we have for each other over all these years, and mean so much to me. Together, we have shared an incredible Jewish journey, beginning with what was my first women's mission back in Prague and Budapest with our Moms of Blessed Memory in 1997. As we traveled through there, we realized we had an instinctive sisterhood before we even got to know each other better. And that sisterhood continues to grow and strengthen over the years. We're not going anywhere. We've got each other. I count you and our friendship among my greatest blessings. I'm going to pull it back together here. Okay, it's been about 30 years since I first became a Lion of Judah. And it's been quite a journey from marginal involvement to significant leadership roles, each of which has enriched me and given me a greater sense of my identity and purpose as an American Jewish woman who's strongly and deeply committed to Israel and the global Jewish community. We coined a word at one point along my journey, and I think it's in my Jewish agency hat, where here in Metro West, we're local, we're here together in a room, but we go so much further. So there's this concept of glocal. And we are both local and global at the same time, because the global world is our local community as well. I am awestruck to be honored by you, the amazing women of Greater Metro West. It is humbling to now share this honor with those who preceded me, some of whom are in this room today, my role models. To stand on your shoulders, and those who couldn't be with us today, is perhaps one of my greatest achievements. I feel so honored to be part of this crowd. You are each and every one of you incredible women of valor, and each in your own characteristic way has deeply impacted our Jewish world. I'm reminded of my first campaign years and director's mission. It was 1998 in the summer. It was in the middle of Moscow, a little bit toasty, in the JCC, where people were waiting to get their paperwork in order to make Aliyah, go to Israel. Of course, it wasn't the kind of Aliyah that our friends in Russia and Ukraine are facing today. It was Aliyah of choice back then. At that point, an elderly woman who could have been my grandmother approached me, and she wanted to thank me. Thank me. I said, for what? Thank me for helping her to get to Israel. Mind you, this is early on in my journey. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was still learning. And here, this little Baba from Russia is saying thank you to Lori Klinghoffer from Short Hills, New Jersey. I had an epiphany. We, each one of us, impacts the bigger picture. We are part of doing good. We live generously. We make a difference, each and every one of us. We are part of the bigger picture that changes people's lives for the better every single day. It took me a while to get there, but here we are. I've been deeply touched and inspired by so many along the way. Far too many to name here, but each holds a very special place in my heart. I would not have taken this journey were it not for the support and guidance of those closest to me. Beginning with you, Stephen. Pay attention, honey. My partner in life, my mentor, my guide, my North Star. You have put up with me, encouraged me, it's all your fault, taught me, and consistently pushed me to be the me I never knew I could or would be. You complete me. Thank you. I love you. And by the way, I do consider our crazy, chaotic, beautiful family our greatest accomplishment. As a mom and Savta, there is no bigger priority in my life, and I have to thank my kids, my Lisa and Rachel, Felix and Noah, and their magnificent children for so much nachas. Our strong family ties inspire me and my broader perspective and love for my extended mishpucha, the global Jewish community. I remember Lisa saying when I finished my term as president of Federation, how proud she was. There was a video and she was just, so articulate. And she knows how important her family is to her and that they are my top priority. Only problem is that I consider the entire global Jewish community my family, which, there is some truth to that. Along my journey, I've also been fortunate to partner with incredible, talented, and compassionate Jewish communal professionals from Metro West to JFNA and the Jewish Agency. I always have understood we share the same ties. We are bonded. We have the same passion, the same commitment for Jewish life and making a better world. I have learned from each and been inspired by every partner I've had the privilege to embark a journey with. The relationships built with both professionals and volunteers through my involvement have forged lifelong connections that fulfill me, feed my passion, and give me purpose. I am grateful for all the opportunities I've been privileged to embark upon over the years. It all began here in Greater Metro West. This is my home, and I thank you.
Lori will be honored again nationally at the Lion of Judah Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, December 10th through 13th. Join Lions from all over the world at this special gathering. And there's one more adventure we want to invite you on, the Centennial Mission to Israel from July 2nd to July 10th, 2023. That this summer we want you to come to. We already have over 250 community members registered. Whether you've never been to Israel or if it's your 100th visit to Israel, it's certain to be an unforgettable experience. Now, Lori and I are going into the other room to talk, have dessert, and we hope you will join us. Thank you for living generously and joining us.